Hey guys, I'm back with another retrospective review and deep dive. This time we're going to be talking about a lesser known game, and that game is Frontlines Fuel of War. Frontlines Fuel of War was developed by Chaos Studios, which is no longer operational, and it was published by THQ. It was released on the Xbox 360 in February of 2008. This game was originally intended to be developed for both the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but the developer experienced issues with the PS3 version, and that version ended up being canceled. So Microsoft ended up getting an accidental Xbox exclusive in Frontlines Fuel of War. So Frontlines takes place in a relatively unique setting for the time it was released. The events of the game transpire in the year 2024 in an alternate universe. In this alternate reality, the world has been plagued by an avian influenza outbreak, which is pretty interesting in retrospect considering the COVID outbreak that occurred in 2020 in our reality. At the same time in the game, the world is experiencing an energy crisis. All this strife has created a rift in the world, and two factions now compete for these resources. In this setting of global conflict, the game utilizes futuristic weapons and vehicle combat. During the relatively short campaign, probably about 6 hours in length, you play as a soldier of the Western Coalition, using the various weapons and tools at your disposal to eliminate members of the Red Star Alliance. In the aspect of vehicles and their implementation into combat, this game was relatively ahead of its time. It not only used tanks and other armored vehicles, but remote-controlled helicopters, remote-controlled cars, and remote-controlled robots as well. The gameplay in this campaign, depending on what mission you were on, relied heavily on the implementation of these vehicles in combat. As a whole, the implementation was successful in varying up the combat throughout the campaign. In my personal opinion, the futuristic design of the weapons were really well done. They looked good, they looked sleek, and they worked pretty well. The variation in vehicle controls were also implemented well. The controls were responsive, and the vehicles were effective. Above all else though, they were really fun to use. Despite the relatively smooth application of the vehicles in the single-player campaign, it's easy to tell that this game was designed with a more multiplayer-centric focus. For example, the helicopter had a turret that you could switch to, but if you switched out of the cockpit into the turret, your helicopter would fall out of the sky. Another aspect that I found interesting in this game is that you don't play as a named character throughout the campaign. You don't even play as a group of named characters throughout the campaign. You play as a nameless soldier. Rather than respawning when you die, you have a certain number of redeployments where in essence, you play as a completely different soldier every time you die. One of the missions in the main campaign even has every single member of the team you're on perish in an explosion. This doesn't occur at the end of the campaign, but rather in the middle. And therefore, as a nameless, generic soldier, you make your way across war-torn countries and war-torn cities as you battle your way into different objectives. From a retrospective point of view, there is an abundance of jankiness in this game. Now, there's definitely some jank and wonkiness in the core mechanics itself. There are occasions where hits don't register, the movement speed is really slow, and the reload speed is even slower. I understand the aspect that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, but sometimes slow is just plain slow. There are a variety of weapons in the game, from rocket launchers to assault rifles to shotguns to SMGs. Sometimes the weapons don't behave like they're supposed to. For example, the submachine gun kind of acts as a sniper rifle and is capable of taking out people from a distance rather than up close. The submachine gun itself feels more accurate and impactful than the assault rifle. Now, there are issues with the melee. The melee is super powerful, which I love, but the animations don't fit the bill, and it feels like they should be doing a lot more to get the effect that you're getting. There are also occasional issues with the fidelity of the game itself. On this one mission, I was about to complete it without dying to get the achievement, and I ended up falling through the floor. I found that kind of frustrating that I was unable to get the achievement because of the gameplay issues. Overall, the game is fun, but it is also forgettable. Definitely made a small impact when it entered the market in 2008, but in retrospective, the game hasn't aged very well. There's definitely a lot of fun to be had in this game. I really love the shotgun, how impactful it was, how much of a punch it packed, and how effective it was at a distance. I really love taking out the helicopters using a rocket launcher. I found the animations when they exploded to be really satisfying, as a heap of metal fell to the earth in a ball of fire, and you could actually run up to the helicopter and hit it if you wanted to. As previously discussed, I like the setting as well, how the Red Star Alliance was pretty much like the Russian Empire, and the Western Coalition was NATO. The weapons themselves, despite some of their flaws, were fun to use. It was fun to toss grenades at enemies and have them launch off a building. Now, despite my issues with the assault rifle and its ammunition that felt more like mosquito bites than 7.62 rounds, I loved the underslung grenade launcher. The grenade launcher was super effective, super satisfying to use, and added a little bit of depth to the game. I did, however, find the outdoor environments to be lacking. They felt pretty cheap and more like sets on a movie than actual buildings. I know it's supposed to be war-torn countries and war-torn buildings, but it just feels super cheap and plastic-like. Another aspect that people may like or dislike depending on your taste is the fact that you cannot pick up any weapons in this game. You are stuck with the loadout you start out with. You can change the loadout when you die and redeploy, but until then you're stuck with the weapons you have. You end up searching for ammo boxes to replenish those ammo, and it's kind of annoying that you can't pick up a cool looking weapon that an enemy has. Now personally, it did detract from the gameplay itself for me because I wanted to be able to pick up an AK and use an enemy's weapon against them. I guess a good aspect of it is that if you're right by an ammo box in a combat arena, you can definitely cheese the enemies by shooting and using all your ammo and then running back and reloading. So you basically have 4 different classes that you unlock throughout the campaign. You start out with the assault class, which is the assault rifle and the grenade launcher attached to it. Then you have the submachine gun class, and then you have the sniper class, which is the sniper rifle and the shotgun, and then you have the heavy gunner class, which has the machine gun. Overall, I found this game pretty fun. Now, despite the jank and the dated first-person combat, I would say the game is definitely a win for an Xbox exclusive. It's worth the $15. It's backwards compatible. I'd definitely say if you want to play a first-person shooter from 2008, pick this gem up. All that being said, I'm going to give this game a subjective score of 7 and an objective score of 6.5. The game definitely shows its age, definitely has some clunky combat, the story leaves a lot to be desired, but overall is a genuinely fun experience. Frontlines Fuel of War feels dated, but you can definitely see the impact, however big or small it had, when it released in 2008. Anyway, thanks for watching, hope you all have a good one.